Be prepared to act on the data that you receive. So when you get this data coming in here, act on it. My passion comes from people collecting data that they can't act on. Hello and welcome to the Jumpstart Podcast with Jeffalytics. I'm your host, Jeff Sauer. Today, for our 59th episode, I want to talk to you about what you can learn from surveying your prospects to see why they didn't buy from you. Now, this episode is going to hit close to home because it's specifically talking about a survey that I ran about 2 weeks ago and what I'm doing with the learnings that came from those results. But before we get to those learnings, I want to say that it feels like forever since our last Jeffisode. Even though it was recorded just over 2 weeks ago, so much has happened since we last talked. It seems like every 2 weeks is not enough time to share everything that's going on. It feels like my business is moving along in dog years versus human years. So 2 weeks is actually, it feels like about 2 months when you go through all the different things we're going through. Now, there's so much happening and so many things that get me excited that time is just flying by. It helps that I'm stationary for the first time since the end of February. We have an apartment here in Porto. It's serving as an amazing backdrop. And while I love traveling, I also love being heads down and working from a non-US time zone. I just get so much more done when I don't have to be on the US schedule, answering emails, sitting at my computer, trying to respond in real time. Now, hopefully I'll have even more developments to share with you 2 weeks from now when we do our next Jeffisode. But for now, let's get back to this survey. Why did I conduct a survey? Well, the first thing is that I have a lot of gut instincts about different parts of the business, whether things are working or not, feedback that I've received, anecdotal type of feedback, but I don't know if it's true or not because a gut instinct is basically just something that you think is going to happen. But no matter how convinced you are, it's better to have some data behind it. And individual conversations, they stand out so much in your mind that it's easy to make decisions based on those. So my gut instincts, like what Jeff thinks is going on or needs to be improved, that's one thing. And then if I talk to one person and they confirm it or corroborate it, I can go down a pretty heavy path without really knowing if this is going to work or not. And I've done that before. In 2014, I took feedback from some of my students at St. Thomas, which is the place where I teach the digital marketing certificate program. And I created a whole website for what they said they wanted. For just a couple people in my class, I created this whole website, spent about a year on it, and none of them ended up becoming customers because I didn't have the right value proposition. So so sometimes I'll just go crazy as an entrepreneur. I'll just create something based on an individual conversation or a handful of people and make decisions and realize that it wasn't statistically significant. It wasn't the right way to do things. So you need both qualitative and quantitative data to make decisions. And as an entrepreneur, these times around, I get smarter. I have to get smarter if I want to keep on doing this, if I want to keep on growing the business, because it's going well. The business is growing. Everything's happening in the right way, but you never know if it's going to continue to grow unless you keep on making adjustments. So my gut was saying one thing, but I wanted to hear it from real people, real prospects, people who were getting my emails, engaging with them, either replying, responding, commenting, whatever it is, but they didn't actually make a purchase. They did all the things that I wanted them to do, but they weren't buying. So what was missing? And honestly, I'm really glad I did this survey because while my gut instincts were almost certainly correct, I got a much better understanding of why somebody didn't buy who's on the prospects list, why my business exists, why I need to make changes, and most importantly, why my business is going to be triumphant in the end. And I can't tell you how much that excites me. So let's get into it. Now, here are 10 talking points about what I learned from surveying my non-buying prospects. First one is temper your expectations. Not everybody's going to respond to a survey call. In fact, most people are not going to respond to a survey call. So if you're going out there and you're doing a survey, yes, it sounds good. You should absolutely survey your prospects, but realize that not a lot of them are going to respond. I don't know what the industry standard is, but I was expecting somewhere around, from the overall people that I emailed, I think I emailed a list of 1,500 people. I was expecting somewhere between 30 and 50 responses. And that's exactly where we got. We got almost 50. So 45 responses, I think, when I look at this thing most recently. So I hit 30 right away, and then I resent the email, and I did a few more calls for people to send the survey, and we squeaked out another 15 responses out of that. And so basically 30 out of 1,500 ends up being 2% of the people who responded. So I'm not sure about everybody else who sends out a survey, but I think that's a pretty reasonable rate to expect, that if you survey an entire database of people, you might get a 2% response rate. If you get 5%, you're doing pretty well. If you get 10%, man, it's amazing. So in order to even get a 2% rate, I decided to get creative. I write a weekly newsletter called the agency Sage. Soon is going to be called Sage. I write the Sage newsletter every Friday. And this one I decided to write the Sage message about taking surveys and surveying your customers. So it's sort of a meta thing where I was like asking them to answer my survey, but I was talking about how they should survey their audience as well, or they should get some feedback. And so knowing that not everybody would respond, I was like, I have to get creative with this thing. Now, honestly, I might have gotten better response if I just said survey, and I might have gotten more than a 2% response. I'm not sure about that, but I just thought it would be fun. And that's part of my values. One of the values that I have in my organization is to be unique, put your personality into it. So I didn't want to just have a generic survey. I wanted to make it a learning thing. So I decided to get creative with how I put out the invite, and I think that really did help. Even if I didn't get more responses, people who did responded in a really favorable way, and they gave me the information I was looking for. Number 3, don't be afraid to test. Now this is the other piece, is that I wanted to see if I needed to give out an incentive in the survey in order to get somebody to respond. I wanted to see if different subject lines matter. So I did a 50-50 split test with the database where half of them got the incentive, the other half did not get the incentive, and utilized that to see if it would get a higher response rate. And absolutely it did. So giving an incentive got about a 3% conversion rate, 2.7, and not giving a incentive gave us a smaller rate. So we got it about in the 1.3 range. So when you add it up, if I would have sent out the incentive to everybody, I probably would have gotten a better response rate. And that's something I learned, so maybe next time I can give out some kind of incentive. And the incentive I gave in this case is I simply just said, ask me any question you want and I'll record a video response for you. And I've gotten 6 of those so far. I've responded to 4 of them, and I'm going to do 2 more once I get done recording this. And basically it was very little minimal work, probably about 60 to 90 minutes or so of responding to people, and that's all that it took to give the incentive. So yes, it did take some time. It didn't take that much time though to get that. And so the incentive did work. I got a higher open rate for the incentive-based invite, and also more people filled out the survey because of it. So don't be afraid to test, see if what's working, see if your instincts are right. If I were to do this again, I might just send out a straight up survey email and see if that works. So I know that incentives work, but do we do a survey email with incentives, and then do I do a longer one without it? And then also, how many answers do you need, right? Do I need to have more than that number of responses? Yes, it would be great if I had 600 responses, but I actually have enough data to go on with the 45 responses to know that my instincts were correct. Now, we'll get to that in the instincts and everything in just a little bit here, but let's go to number 4. Don't stick too closely to your biases. So when people build out surveys, a lot of times what they do is they build the survey to play to their biases. If they think something's going on, they'll phrase the questions so that people respond exactly how they want. They'll basically use their gut instinct, and then they'll design a survey around self-serving, around self-serving answers so that they can validate what they're doing and they think that it's right. It's like, man, I don't want to do that, because I obviously thought that I knew what people wanted, and for these people who were reading the emails but didn't purchase, I didn't know what they wanted. And so I needed to ask them. I didn't want to confirm my instinct, because that instinct wasn't working as well as I thought in that particular segment. Now, when I say these things, this segment is not successful, obviously there are people who are buying this product. There's people who are very, very happy with this product. Just like any business owner, I want more of it. Obviously, that's the whole point, right? That's the point of marketing. That's the point of everything we do, is we want more of it. And so this is basically trying to figure out, is there a way to get more out of it from the existing people who are prospects? Or if I do more outbound advertising, if I do more marketing, will this appeal to people? So you want to figure out with a small group of people how to appeal to them, so then when you roll it out to the masses, you have something that's on point, something that actually is what people want. And if you build your own biases into that, then you're just going to scale things out of control. You're going to scale things in a way that shouldn't be scaled, or in a way that's ineffective. And so you want to make sure that you don't build your own biases into the survey. Number 5, make sure your results are easy to understand and to interpret. Now, this is a good one, because I had a lot of free-form questions in there. How much would you be willing to pay? And how much money do you make right now? And actually, I did ask that question, is how much does your company make? How big is your company? Because that does help me with the bucketing of these responses. And at first I wanted people to, to free form it. But then one of my team members was like, well, we're not going to be able to analyze that very easily if you let them free form it. You're going to have to massage that data. People are going to respond in different currencies in different ways. And so when I asked the question, how much are you willing to pay? I gave a range instead of giving them the opportunity to enter it in there. And I think that made a big difference because I was able to do a pivot table with the results and easily see, but based on company size, how much they are willing to pay. And so that was really a good way to do it. So make sure that when you do get results that you can understand it. You want to have some free-form answers because then you can learn about somebody and you can see why they say things. Like one example of a free form one was, why didn't you buy this course? Now, some of the most valid answers that I got were, one is, I don't want to start an agency. That was obviously, you probably know what product this is for now. Other people said, I don't have time to commit to it. I know this is going to be really good, but I'm not committed to it in my own business. Or a lot of other people said, I bought several online courses already, and so I want to differentiate. I don't need another course. And this is good to see because now I have 3 objections that I can overcome. Because one, you don't need to start an agency with this material. It's just good business stuff. It's not so much creating an agency. The result of this is just to create a good business. Now, when the product is called the agency course, that obviously I can understand people's bias. So I can overcome that with a new name, for example. We look at people who are enrolled in other courses. This isn't like a course either. This is more of a support network. It's more of a program that somebody can use to completely grow their business. And so that's an overcoming thing as well, where instead of calling it a course, we can call it a program or something clever. Now you'll see the name I came up with at some point once I release it to the public, but basically agency course has 2 misconceptions of what the material is already inside of the name. People don't want to start agencies necessarily. They just want to start a business. They just want to freelance. They just want to have independence. And the other thing is that they don't know if they want a course. But anybody wants some kind of support network, any kind of way to jump ahead of things. So you might see that Jumpstart ends up becoming part of the name of this new product that's a spin-off of the existing one. Now, seeing these free-form answers is tremendous for overcoming objections because these are written in ways that people are talking. And so having that, I can actually overcome those objections. I could email those people individually and say, well, you got it all wrong. Or I can just design a better product and design better marketing so that I can answer those questions proactively for other people. And obviously, the other thing was price. I mean, one of the reasons that I didn't mention here, but people said that it was just too expensive for them at this point in their business. Now, when I correlated the price that I'm charging for the product with how much money they're making, I can see why they think that, because it's a significant percentage of their overall revenue that's coming in. And so then that makes me think, okay, well, do you offer something for people who don't have the revenue yet to get them the revenue? And then what price point do you put that at? Do you get them the opportunity to do that? And there's actually all kinds of stuff that came out of this survey. It was really amazing, like the few answers that I got, how much it validated what I had in my mind, and also just helped me propel in the direction of where I think things should end up going. So more on that, probably not in this podcast, but more of that in a future one. Number 6, don't ask for too much data because you're never going to use it. Now, consider the user in this one. I made this thing so that the average response took between 5 and 7 minutes. Now, I thought it was going to take 3 to 5, but I think people with the free form answers took a little bit more time. But basically, I only asked, I think, 7 questions, and a lot of them were multiple choice. And I got enough data to move things forward. Now, if I would have asked 40 questions, what would have mattered? I hate long surveys. They suck. They suck so bad. I actually created a whole blog post about this, about how I think I called it "Your Website Survey is Ruining My Life" or "Killing Me Slowly," something like that. And that's absolutely the truth. We'll link out to that in the show notes. But basically, yes, website surveys ruin my life. They suck away my will to live and make me want to kill myself pretty much every time that I get invited to a simple survey that's only going to take 40 minutes to complete. It's like, what the are you going to do with that data anyway? You're not going to do anything because you're some big, stupid, nameless, faceless corporation who never, ever can implement these things because you think that you're the shit and you're probably not. And just off. Now that gets me fired up. As you can see, that was sort of a rant that I didn't think I was going to get into. But yes, don't ask for too much data because you're never going to use it. And also, with 7 questions and answers, I pretty much can do a pivot on my entire business and make things better just from 45 people. So I don't know if you get hundreds of answers and you get all this data. I don't know what you're going to do with it because it's going to be conflicting with each other. It's going to be pushing you in weird directions, and you're going to be looking at all these edge cases that I don't know if you can do anything about. So Yeah, consider the user when it goes into this thing, and then consider yourself, because how are you going to analyze this mound of data? Number 7, incentives work for filling out surveys. I can say that definitively, I guess, from my experience, because I sent it out to 750 people each one, and the incentive worked. It worked in every single way. Got a higher email open rate, higher email click-through rate, higher survey start rate, higher survey completion rate. Those metrics were there. So I wrote about this in a blog post, in a Sage blog post. The next week I wrote about the results of that little experiment. You should check it out in the show notes, because it's awesome. And it's always fun to run your own experiments versus relying on some kind of best practice. Because those best practices are probably written by those same companies that I was just ranting about in part 6. The ones who, the best practice is to collect all this data and to not do anything with it, and to always have a survey invite that goes out to 100% of the people. And then we can see how unhappy our customers are with you. And we can do a month-over-month comparison about how shit you are as a company. Because that's what we need to do, because it's backed by the ACSI and it's backed by who knows who, but we did it and we're academics and this is cool. And again, your survey invite is ruining my life. See how I feel? I have a little bit of passion about that. So when I did a survey, just going back to earlier, I was like, I wanted to be different. I wanted to stand out. Like, this is rooted in what I believe in. This is what I believe in, and this is what I want my company to believe in, is that generic sucks. And just because other people do it some way, and just because there's best practices, they still suck. And I don't think that companies in the future are going to be able to get by on that. I think that those companies are going to slowly fizzle out, or they're going to try to buy companies that actually do things in a unique way. And so when you set the culture of your company, or when the culture gets evolved, do you want to be like everybody else? Do you want to be corporate, or do you want to be the workplace of the future? Do you want to be the business of the future? Because guess what? Corporate's dying. Corporate's going to go away at some point in time. Actually, I don't really know if that's true or not, but that's sort of my belief, and that's sort of how I run my life, is that corporations aren't going to be there, and they're never going to support me, Jeff. Corporations are never going to be the solution to my problems, so I need to figure it out on my own. Anyways, man, this rant got a little crazy. You notice how when I do these Jeffisodes and I don't script it out and I just put a bullet point of what I want to talk about, how much more passionate I get. So I definitely plan on doing that more often when I go forward. Now, you might not even know what I'm talking about. Basically, half the podcasts, what I'll do is I'll script out everything I want to say in the Jeffisode. I'll write the whole thing almost like a blog post, and then I'll read it. The other half, I will put down just the headline, like what the bullet point is, and then I'll just start talking about whatever comes to mind. And when I talk about what comes to mind, the passion can come out because I'm not doing it scripted. Unscripted, everybody. This is Jeff Sauer. Unscripted. All right. Number 8, there is never enough data. Just deal with it. This is the opposite of what I just said. I said that you can't have too much data, and now I said there's never enough data. Let's put it this way. It is not statistically significant to make entire business decisions off of 45 responses from people who are a random sample of people from a list. It's not surveying the general public. It's not a political poll. The margin of error is actually much, much higher than anybody should be able to fathom. But that's entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is making these ideas based on a group of people who don't even know what the future is going to be, right? So you're asking somebody what they're going to think about your future thing when you haven't even invented it yet. There's never going to be enough data to make a sound decision. But there's instinct. And so there are data points that you can realize and you can utilize to make better decisions. And you can inform what you're doing. So there's never enough data. There's sometimes too much data. But the bottom line is, how do you mesh these things together into the right data for you in that situation? And so, yes, there's both way too much data in the world when you have a 40-question, 40-minute survey, and also there's not enough data when you only get 45 people to fill out 7 questions. Guess what? Neither of those things are going to be perfect. You have to just figure it out in between. And that leads me to number 9. Be prepared to act on the data that you receive. So when you get this data coming in here, act on it. My passion comes from people collecting data that they can't act on. I can't tell you how many companies that I've worked with, I've had clients where they run those 4C results surveys, or even the 4Q survey that was done by iPerceptions and Avinash back in the day. I think it still exists, but they had these little surveys, And I would analyze them and I'd look at the results, and nobody ever did anything about it. It was the same complaints over and over again for these big companies. And it's like, why even run the survey in the first place? So be prepared to act on the data that you receive. So we structured this thing. I could have asked a million more questions. I asked fewer questions, and I'm ready to act on it. And that's what I've been doing, is I'm acting on it. All kinds of stuff. And we'll get to that in a future episode, of course. Number 10, take some downtime to process the information you collect and to think. Now, this can be structured downtime, or it can just be the result of having your mind blown with these responses. Now, I think for me, part of it's the downtime I was mentioning earlier, or just the work time of being in another country. I'm awake for 6 hours before I get a single email from the US, which is really nice in that sense. And so I have a lot of time. I've been running basically every other morning along the river, the Douro River here in Porto, listening to podcasts, doing all kinds of stuff. And basically I've thought about this problem every day, multiple times a day for 2 weeks. And when I say problem, I just mean it means that I have to change things. It means that what I thought was working, or the way that I thought I was going to do it, is not necessarily going to be the end all be all. And so I have to act on it. I have to think about it. When I walk around, I think about it. When I'm at dinner, I think about it. When I'm listening to a podcast, I think about it. When I listen to music, I think about it. And then I act on it too. Sometimes too quickly. I registered about 10 domains in the last 2 weeks. Just with ideas, I was like, is this domain available? So I take up business ideas. I search to see if the domain name's available. And then I'm paranoid. And I think that basically the registrar is going to steal that domain name if I don't register it. I don't know if you've ever done that before, but I remember back in the day, and I think this has gotten better now, but there were registrars who would scrape people's searches on databases, and they would register it, and they'd try to sell it to you for hundreds to thousands of dollars. I don't think that people do it as much anymore, but I've actually noticed in my latest domain name searching that they will do this. People will register 2-word things together and then try to sell it to you for $1,000. They call them premium domains, and they're based on dictionary words. And so there's a few things that I thought were good ideas that have never been used as a brand before, never trademarked or anything, and yet I have to pay $1,000 just for the privilege. And so that's really frustrating. And so what I do is if I see something, I register it. And so there's one that I thought that it was like my end all be all, and I registered the domain name for 10 years, and there's no way I'm going to use it again. The next morning, I sort of hated it, or I didn't like it as much, or I ran it by people and they're like, that doesn't make sense. And so I have found my end all be all domain name for this new pivot based on the information from the survey, the new direction I'm going to take this thing. It's not even a pivot. It's just sort of a repackaging of the information to address the concerns from the survey, and then also just to address how I want to evolve this thing in the business models and stuff like that. And so I locked that one up too, because obviously that's what you do. But it's one of 10. So finally, after 10 domain names, the 10th one finally stuck. And actually, I think I've registered a few since then, just in case. But it's sort of funny how that goes. During this think time, I'll sit at my computer and I'll start to develop on this vision, and I'll start to act it out and to do it. And I'll be like, this will never work. I've had doubts. I've scrapped it. I've chosen technologies. I've scrapped technologies. I've fallen in love with technologies, and I've fallen out of love and learned to hate technology. And then I started to love them again. I mean, it's sort of a crazy roller coaster that's been going on between the think time, which I highly recommend, and then the do time. And so you need a combination of both of those. Now, the funny thing is that whenever I go away from the doing time or from the computer and I apply some think time, I immediately have the result the next morning, and I just implement it. I go to bed with a roadblock. I wake up the next day, or I clear my head, or I go running, and it's gone. I got an idea for my next book, or for my first book, actually. I keep on saying next book, but I got an idea for my book when I was running. I have this awesome title, and I think that I'm going to make a free course about it. And so be on the lookout for that one. And if you want to know what that title is for the book, man, do I say it in here? Like, I'm not worried about anybody stealing it, but also I might change my mind. So send me a note and say, what's the name of the book? And I'd love to run it by anybody who's listening, because you guys are all so supportive of me. Last night, I woke up in the middle of the night and I found a solution to a problem I had with content dripping and protection. I was like, okay, I think I have a solution now for this problem. Because every time I start to build something out, I come up with like an idea, and then I'm like, oh man, this is really cool, but it's going to break this. It's going to do this. So basically, figuring out a business model to go on top of the feedback of these surveys, and then also a way to make it so that it works and then you can protect your intellectual capital, all that stuff. It's a puzzle. It's like a big puzzle box. And then also without having to incur too much development expense and development time to, web development time to make this application actually work. It's crazy. So I'm basically orchestrating a lot of off-the-shelf software to build my solutions. I've done that ever since my first course. I basically take several WordPress plugins and different things, and then I make them into what I want them to be and orchestrate all that. And so that's something where I'm doing that now too. And it's fortunate because I can make changes without having to go through a big developer. I can see if something is going to work or not and go from there. But anyway, thinking time is vital, but if you're overscheduled, then you're never going to get to it. I think most people are overscheduled. They basically don't have enough time to think about their business or to go through things, and then they end up just doing the same thing over and over again. I'm fortunate that I'm able to time shift, that I'm able to go to another country and also plan things around where I have think time. I have major windows of think time and doing time too. I can get stuff done. But anybody, if you're going to be in business, then you need to do that. Even if you're not in business, you need to have think time for sure, because then you can solve problems. Problems aren't solved by number of hours you spend. It's by the amount of time you spend away from that problem, about the amount of time you spend away from technology, frankly, your clear head. That's like, and I hate to cite Steve Jobs because everybody does, and they're like, oh yeah, Steve Jobs did this. But one thing I learned from his biography is that he did take these long walks, and that's when he came up with a lot of his solutions. So yes, Steve Jobs, long walks, solutions. Jeff Sauer, long downtime, solutions. Same person? No, we're not the same person. Similarities? No, not really. I'm not an asshole. Did I learn something from Steve Jobs? No, I sort of learned it on my own. Could you learn something from comparing Jeff Sauer to Steve Jobs? Bingo. You absolutely could. Now, should you? Probably not. This is digression too, right? Like, this is getting a little bit crazy. It's like 10 in the morning here. So it's not like I've been drinking. I haven't even had that much coffee. I'm just getting high on the passion of talking about awesome business stuff. Anyways, break things down into smaller chunks. Use weekends to get things done. Close your inbox while you work on things. Eliminate distractions. There's been a lot of posts going around lately that I've been reading about. Delete all push notifications off of your phone. Hell yeah. Push notifications suck. They literally suck the life out of you. They suck your productivity away. Get rid of Facebook's ability to notify you. Get rid of Facebook on your phone. But anyway, get rid of your stupid distractions. Spend more time thinking. Okay, let's get to a bonus. This is number 11, a bonus tip. Study what other people are doing, but do not copy them. Outdo them. Now, here's what I mean. When I look at different things that are out there, I've taught for a lot of different online courses. I've taught for universities, and I see how they operate things. Now, I could easily see that they're doing well and then want to copy everything they're doing and then make that my business model with different content or the same content and just outmarket them. But the reality is that you're looking at their representation of what's happening today, and your future is whatever you develop in the future. So if you copy them where they're at today, you're always going to be behind. You have to look at this thing. You have to look at another business. You have to look at your competitor and say, how can I do this thing better? Because if you can't do it better when it's an idea, if you can't be better than them and you don't have several features or several different things that differentiate you, then what's going to end up happening is that when you release it, they're going to be light years ahead of you again because they have implemented features, either the same features that you were going to do or better features or evolution. So if you can't figure out how you're going to beat somebody right now and how you're better than them, and you can't be competitive in that sense, it's not going to just magically happen once you release this thing. So unless you have that ultimate conviction that you're going to be better, it doesn't matter because they have a head start on you and they're going to evolve. Now, when I think about my way of doing things, my ideas, I've been sort of borrowing elements from different places, thinking about what I liked and what I didn't like about teaching at certain places, how they're doing. And I'm basically coming up with a better version of these different data points. I'm fortunate that I've been inside of a lot of different businesses and a lot of different situations, and now I can sort of figure out what I think is the best way to do it. I can figure out what I like, what I didn't like, what I would improve. And when I pull this thing off, it's going to be better. Now, there's an advantage to being an early adopter, for sure. Early adopters have the first mover advantage, but there's an even bigger advantage to being better in every single way. Now, I ran this survey not knowing what to expect, but I feel like I now have a blueprint for how to make things better. It was good already. I want to make sure that I'm clear about that. I have the business that I wanted, but I also need to keep on raising the bar, get things to improve, and I want to improve the processes. I want to have things run the way that I know that it can be. And so this survey really helped me get over a mental leap, but then it also initiated all this additional thinking, this thinking that I can use to continue to improve the business. So hopefully you got some insights from this. I don't know. Let me know if you ever get a chance to respond to me. I know a lot of you do respond to these things. Let me know whether you like it when I go on script or off script. For comparison, episode 57 was on script. I think that I think I've been doing on script a lot lately. So before that, I was off script. Which one do you like better? On script, off script? And that's all for today. That's our closing thoughts. All right, have a good one, and I'll talk to you next week with an interview, and then 2 weeks from now, we're going to do another Jefisode, and we'll see where that one leads us. For show notes, visit Jeffalytics.com/learningfromprospects, and you can see all the links that we link to, or just visit your friendly neighborhood Jeffalytics.com, and you know where to reach me there as well. Talk to you soon.